The sound hit me first. Cardboard scraping against metal, plastic rustling, low voices murmuring instructions. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching three men in gray uniforms methodically emptying what had once been my office. One man balanced my Crystal Research Award, the one I'd received just last year for pioneering biological containment protocols, atop a pile of trash bags. "Careful with that," another worker cautioned. "It looks expensive." "Doesn't matter," replied a third, shoving my research binders into industrial-sized waste bags. "Everything goes." My knees nearly buckled. 6 weeks of radiation therapy had left me more fragile than I'd anticipated. I gripped the doorframe, my hospital wristband still intact from my final treatment that morning. "What's happening here?" The question escaped as barely more than a whisper. The workers startled, turning toward me with widening eyes. One dropped the binder he was holding. "Ma'am, we're just following orders," the nearest one said, avoiding my gaze. Heavy footsteps approached from behind. "Miran, you weren't supposed to return until next Monday." Elias, the supervisor of environmental safety, appeared beside me, his expression flickering between surprise and something darker. "My doctor cleared me early." I watched as they continued dismantling 15 years of my professional life. My diplomas had been stripped from the walls. The cabinet where I'd stored research samples was emptied. My personal belongings, including the photo of my sister and me at the summit of Mount Rainier, were nowhere to be seen. "Where are my research files? The containment protocol drafts?" My voice strengthened with growing alarm. Elias shifted uncomfortably. "There's been a reorganization while you were away. Your position is being integrated into general operations." Integrated? The word felt like gravel in my mouth. "You should speak with HR. Vega can explain everything. I have a presentation to prepare for tomorrow." Without another word, he strode away, leaving me amid the dismantling of my career. 20 minutes later, I sat across from Vega, the head of human resources. She tapped at her tablet, not bothering to look up when I entered. "We needed the space," she said flatly, finally meeting my eyes. "The Biological Safety Committee is being restructured. Your position no longer exists as an independent entity." "I built that department from nothing," I said, leaning forward. "I wrote the protocols that earned us Level 4 certification after the disaster at the sister facility." She slid a folder toward me. "Your contributions have been acknowledged in your severance package." "Severance?" The room seemed to tilt. "I'm being terminated?" "Technically, your role has been absorbed. We're offering 6 months' salary, which is quite generous considering the circumstances." "What circumstances?" Vega's expression remained neutral. "The committee determined that maintaining a separate biological containment division wasn't cost-effective. The new integrated approach will streamline operations." I left her office in a daze, clutching the severance papers. Walking back through the research wing, I passed the main conference room, where Elias stood before a projection screen, surrounded by nodding department heads. "Presenting my new containment protocols to the federal inspection team tomorrow." His voice drifted through the partially open door. "These innovative approaches will revolutionize how we handle potential outbreaks nationwide." I stopped breathing. Those were my protocols, my research, my life's work. For a decade, I developed those systems after the cross-contamination incident that killed 2 lab technicians at our sister facility. I'd testified before Congress. I'd rebuilt public trust in our institution when we nearly lost our accreditation. And now, while I recovered from cancer, they were erasing me. In the parking lot, I sat in my car watching staff carry more of my belongings to the dumpster. My hands trembled as I scrolled through my contacts. Not my lawyer, not the press. I needed someone with immediate impact. I called the direct line of Undersecretary Talia Winters, the woman whose brother had been one of those technicians who died, the woman who had personally recruited me to redesign the nation's lab safety standards, the woman whose team was arriving tomorrow for their inspection. "They're implementing untested protocols," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady. "They've dismantled my entire containment strategy and are presenting it as new work without the safety redundancies." Her response was immediate. "I'm at the regional office, 2 buildings over. Don't move." Before we continue further, thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. If you're enjoying it so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories like this one. Your support means everything to me, and I read every single comment. Now, let's get back to what happened next. My name is Miran Ashcroft, Before I became the pariah of the nation's most prestigious biological research institute, I was their star scientist. The woman who rebuilt safety protocols after the Meridian Lab disaster claimed 3 lives, including Undersecretary Winter's brother. I grew up in a small coastal town where my parents ran the local pharmacy. As a child, I was fascinated by how medicines could transform illness into health, but also terrified by the potential consequences when things went wrong. After losing a childhood friend to a medication error, I dedicated my life to creating safety systems that would prevent such tragedies. By 30, I had 3 advanced degrees and had written the definitive paper on biological containment failures. That paper caught the attention of the National Research Institute after their catastrophic lab breach. They hired me to rebuild their safety protocols from the ground up. For 12 years, I poured everything into my work. My marriage dissolved. You're married to your lab, Mirren, not to me. Holidays were spent perfecting containment strategies. Birthdays passed in clean rooms, testing barrier integrity. I missed my sister's wedding to testify before a congressional committee about laboratory safety standards. The sacrifice seemed worth it. The protocols I developed became the gold standard nationwide. Other research facilities adopted my methods. International organizations requested consultations. Last year, I received the Crystal Award for Excellence in Research Safety, the highest honor in my field. Then came the diagnosis: Stage 3 breast cancer, aggressive treatment plan, 6 weeks of radiation after surgery. Take all the time you need, Elias had assured me, squeezing my shoulder. Your job will be waiting. I believed him. I trusted him. Elias had been hired 6 months earlier to oversee environmental safety, a division separate from mine but with occasional overlap. He often asked questions about my work, expressing admiration for my thoroughness. Now I understood why. During my 6-week absence, Elias had systematically dismantled my department, absorbed my staff into his division, and, most egregiously, claimed my protocols as his own creation. He'd stripped away crucial safety redundancies to save money while maintaining the appearance of innovation. And tomorrow, he would present his protocols to the federal inspection team, securing his advancement while potentially compromising laboratory safety nationwide. Within 40 minutes of my call, 3 government SUVs pulled into the Institute's parking lot. Undersecretary Winters emerged from the first vehicle, her tall figure commanding immediate attention from security personnel who rushed to intercept her. I watched from my car as she flashed her federal credentials. 2 more officials joined her, along with what appeared to be a team of auditors carrying tablets and briefcases. My phone buzzed with a text from Talia, "Come to the main conference room." By the time I arrived, the executive floor was in chaos. The institute director had been summoned. Department heads huddled in corners, whispering urgently. Elias stood by the presentation screen, his face ashen. "Dr. Ashcroft," Talia greeted me formally, though we'd known each other for years. "Please confirm if these are your original containment protocols." She gestured to a set of binders, my binders, that someone had apparently rescued from the trash. I nodded, throat tight. "And these?" She pointed to Elias's presentation on the screen. I examined the displayed diagrams. Those appeared to be modified versions of my work, with several critical safety measures removed. Elias stepped forward. "I made improvements to outdated." "Improvements?" Talia cut him off. "You removed triple barrier containment requirements for level 3 pathogens. You eliminated mandatory waiting periods between sterilization cycles. You reduced air exchange requirements by 40%. The institute director paled. "I wasn't aware of these specific changes." "Of course you were," I said quietly. "I sent comprehensive warnings about these exact modifications last year when they were proposed as cost-cutting measures. I have the emails." All eyes turned to me. "You were very ill," the director stammered. "We thought perhaps you were confused." "Convenient," Talia remarked coldly. "Dr. Ashcroft develops cancer, so you decide her scientific judgment is compromised. Then you steal her work, gut the safety measures to save money, and present it as innovation. The weight of what they'd done, what they'd nearly gotten away with, settled over the room. By noon, the entire executive floor was in lockdown," Talia continued, addressing the group. "As of this moment, I'm initiating a facility-wide inspection. All certifications are under review. Research grants are temporarily frozen pending the outcome." Elias tried to interject, but she silenced him with a raised hand. "And most concerning," she added, We've discovered that critical safety protocols have been altered without proper testing or approval. This represents a potential public health emergency that requires immediate intervention. The color drained from every face in the room. A potential public health emergency meant federal oversight, media attention, and possible criminal charges if negligence was proven. I stood silently as the reality of what I'd set in motion washed over me. This wasn't just about my job anymore. It was about preventing another disaster, one that could have been far worse than the incident that claimed Talia's brother. As federal auditors spread throughout the building, confiscating records and interviewing staff, I felt a hand on my shoulder. "We need to talk," Talia said quietly, guiding me toward an empty office. What she told me next would change everything, not just for me, but for the entire institute. "What I'm about to tell you stays between us," Talia said, closing the door behind us. The empty office, sterile and impersonal, felt like a fitting backdrop for what I was about to hear. She took a deep breath. "The inspection tomorrow wasn't random. We've been investigating this institute for months." "What?" I sank into a chair, suddenly aware of how exhausted I truly was. 6 months ago, we received an anonymous tip about safety violations here. Nothing specific enough to warrant immediate action, but concerning. When I learned you were on medical leave, I became worried. Talia, perched on the edge of the desk. "You were our canary in the coal mine, Mirren. With you gone, I suspected they might try something. So you accelerated the inspection schedule." She nodded. "What I didn't anticipate was finding you here today, discovering they'd completely dismantled your department and stolen your work." My mind raced, connecting dots. The timing of my cancer diagnosis was convenient for them, wasn't it? They were already planning this. Talia's silence was confirmation enough. "There's more," she finally said. "We've found evidence suggesting the modifications to your protocols weren't just about cutting costs. Someone's been selling streamlined versions of containment systems to private laboratories, labs that wouldn't qualify for certification under your original standards. The implications hit me like a physical blow. They're monetizing watered-down safety protocols? That's beyond reckless." "It's criminal," Talia corrected, "and we need your help to prove it." For the first time since walking into my emptied office, I felt something other than devastation, a spark of purpose igniting in my chest. "What do you need me to do?" Talia outlined her plan. I would be reinstated as a special consultant to the investigation, given full access to all records and systems. Officially, the Institute would welcome my expertise in resolving the misunderstandings about protocol modifications. Unofficially, I would be gathering evidence against those responsible. "They'll be watching you closely," Talia warned. "They'll know you're angry about being pushed out. You'll need to convince them you're just grateful to have any position at all." "I can do that," I said, thinking of all the times I'd smiled through gritted teeth at budget meetings while administrators dismissed critical safety concerns as excessive caution. "One more thing," Talia added. "We believe someone very high up is involved. Be careful who you trust." The next morning, I arrived at the Institute wearing my most professional outfit, one that hid how much weight I'd lost during treatment. The radiation burns on my chest ached beneath my blouse, but I ignored the discomfort. I had a role to play. The Institute director, Ambrose, greeted me with forced warmth in the lobby. "Mirren, we're so pleased you're feeling well enough to assist during this misunderstanding." "Happy to help," I replied, matching his false enthusiasm. "I'm sure we can sort everything out quickly." "Absolutely," he agreed, guiding me toward the elevator. "Just a communication breakdown during your absence. Nothing malicious." Behind him, I caught sight of Vega from HR watching us, her expression unreadable. Upstairs, the executive floor buzzed with nervous energy. Federal auditors occupied the main conference room, calling in department heads one by one. Staff whispered in corners, speculation running wild. Elias was nowhere to be seen. "Where's my temporary workspace?" I asked Ambrose. His smile tightened. "We thought you might be most comfortable in your old office." "My emptied office?" I kept my tone light, curious. "Everything's been returned," he assured me quickly. "A complete misunderstanding about your return date." I nodded, as if I believed him. My office had indeed been hastily reassembled, but not correctly. Books stood on shelves in random order. Certificates hung crooked on walls. My desktop items had been arranged by someone who'd never seen my workspace before. Most tellingly, the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet where I'd kept my most sensitive research notes, remained empty. I began my investigation quietly, requesting access to the safety protocol databases to help clarify any discrepancies. No one dared refuse me with federal auditors in the building. Each inquiry revealed more disturbing alterations to my work, not just cost-cutting measures, but systematic dismantling of critical safeguards. By day 3, I discovered something even more alarming. Accessing historical records, I found that someone had been retroactively modifying my original protocols in the main database, changing timestamps to make it appear that the watered-down versions had been my final recommendations all along. I took this evidence to Talia immediately. "They're trying to frame you," she concluded, examining my findings. "If these altered records stand, it would appear that you designed these inadequate protocols, making you liable for any resulting accidents, while they profit from selling the streamlined versions to private labs," I added, the full picture becoming clearer. "And I would have taken the fall if something went wrong. We need to identify who authorized these changes. The system logs should show who accessed these files. But when we checked, the access logs had been purged. Someone with administrator privileges had covered their tracks. That evening, as I prepared to leave, I found a note slipped under my office door. "Parking garage, level 3, 7 p.m. I hesitated, remembering Talia's warning about trust, but this might be my only chance to learn who was behind everything. The parking garage was dimly lit and eerily quiet when I arrived. I clutched my phone, Talia's number ready to dial. Footsteps echoed behind a concrete pillar, and I tensed. "Dr. Ashcroft." I turned to find Zane, one of the IT administrators, emerging from the shadows. His normally confident demeanor had been replaced by nervous vigilance. "I'm risking everything by talking to you," he said, voice low. "They'll know it was me if they check the security cameras." "Who's they?" "The executive committee. Not all of them. A core group led by Ambrose." Zane glanced around anxiously. "I was ordered to alter the timestamps on your protocols, and then delete the access logs. I kept backups." He handed me a small drive. "This proves who made the changes and when. They've been planning this for over a year, since before your diagnosis." I stared at him. "Why are you helping me?" "My sister works at Helix Labs, one of the private facilities that purchased the modified protocols. She noticed safety discrepancies and raised concerns. The next day, she was fired." His expression hardened. "These shortcuts could get people killed." As I took the drive, a car engine revved nearby. Headlights swept across us. "Go," Zane urged. "Different exits. They're watching." I hurried toward the stairs rather than the elevator. The drive clutched tightly in my hand. As I pushed through the stairwell door, I heard footsteps above me, descending rapidly. I froze, listening. Multiple people, coming down fast. I turned and pushed through the door to level 2, moving quickly between parked cars. The elevator dinged across the garage. More people arriving. They knew about the drive. I slipped between 2 large vehicles, crouching low, and called Talia. "Someone's after me in the parking garage," I whispered, when she answered. "I have evidence, but I'm trapped." "Security team is 3 minutes out," she replied. "Can you reach the main exit?" I peered between the cars. 2 men in dark suits were surveying the garage, speaking into radios. The exit was beyond them. "No," I breathed. "They're blocking it." "There's a service corridor on the south wall," Talia instructed. "Maintenance access. Head there. I'm sending the building schematics to your phone." Staying low, I moved between vehicles toward the south wall. My heart pounded so loudly I feared they might hear it. The radiation fatigue I'd been fighting all week threatened to overwhelm me, but adrenaline kept me moving. I found the service door partially hidden behind a concrete pillar, locked. My phone vibrated with a text from Talia, 2357#. I punched in the code. The door clicked open, revealing a narrow maintenance passage. I slipped inside, just as shouts erupted behind me. They'd spotted me. The corridor stretched ahead, dimly lit by emergency lights. I moved as quickly as my weakened body allowed, following the schematics on my phone. The passage would lead to the loading dock, where Talia's team would meet me. Behind me, the service door burst open. Footsteps thundered down the corridor. "Stop! Security!" I pushed harder, lungs burning. The drive clutched in my palm. The loading dock door appeared ahead, freedom just beyond. As I reached for the handle, a hand gripped my shoulder, spinning me around. "That's far enough, Dr. Ashcroft." Ambrose stood before me, flanked by two security guards and Vega from HR. His face, normally composed, twisted with barely controlled rage. "You've become quite troublesome for someone who should be focused on recovery," he said, extending his hand. "The drive, please." I backed against the door, the metal cold against my spine. "You altered my safety protocols. You endangered lives to save money." "I optimized outdated procedures," he countered smoothly. "Your methods were excessive, wasteful. The modified protocols meet minimum regulatory requirements. Minimum requirements aren't enough when lives are at stake." My voice echoed in the narrow space. "You were willing to risk another disaster, just like the one that killed those technicians." Something flickered in his eyes. "Accidents happen in research. Progress requires risk. Not that kind of risk. Never that kind." I gripped the drive tighter. "Why? Just to increase the profit margin?" Ambrose stepped closer. "The Institute was losing funding to private competitors with less restrictive safety overheads. We adapted by stealing my work and corrupting it," I said, the full betrayal washing over me. "And when I got sick, you saw your opportunity." "The drive," he repeated, voice hardening. Now, behind him, the security guards shifted uncomfortably. Even Vega looked uncertain. "What happens when there's an outbreak because of your optimized protocols?" I asked, addressing everyone in the corridor. "When containment fails because you removed the triple barrier system? When people die because sterilization cycles were rushed?" One of the guards exchanged glances with his colleague. "That's enough," Ambrose snapped. He nodded to the guards. "Take it from her." As they moved toward me, the door behind me burst open. Federal agents flooded into the corridor, weapons drawn. Federal agents, everyone down on the ground. Chaos erupted. The security guards immediately surrendered, dropping to their knees with hands raised. Vega backed against the wall, eyes wide with shock. Ambrose lunged toward me in desperation, reaching for the drive. An agent tackled him mid-movement, driving him to the floor. Talia appeared through the doorway, surveying the scene with grim satisfaction. "Perfect timing," I said, legs finally giving way as I slid down the wall to sit on the floor. She knelt beside me. "You okay?" I handed her the drive. "Better than okay. We got them." But as federal agents secured the scene, reading rights and applying handcuffs, I realized something didn't add up. The elaborate scheme, the systematic dismantling of safety protocols, the attempt to frame me, it felt bigger than cost-cutting measures or competitive advantage. Something else was going on, something we hadn't uncovered yet, and somehow I knew Ambrose wasn't the mastermind behind it all. The investigation expanded rapidly in the days that followed. Federal agents combed through the Institute's records, interviewed staff, and seized computers. Ambrose, Elias, and 3 board members were placed on administrative leave pending criminal charges. Vega cooperated immediately, trading information for leniency. The drive Zane provided contained more than just proof of the altered protocols. It revealed a tangled web of corruption reaching beyond the Institute's walls. The modified safety procedures weren't just being sold to private labs. They were part of a coordinated effort to weaken biosafety regulations nationwide. They called it Efficiency Initiative, Talia explained as we reviewed the evidence in a secure room at the federal building. A lobbying push to reduce what they termed excessive containment requirements across all research facilities. I studied the documents spread before us. "Who benefits from weaker safety standards?" "Follow the money," she replied, sliding a financial report toward me. "These modified protocols reduced operational costs by 30%. For large-scale bioresearch, that translates to millions annually." The report listed 12 major research entities that had expressed interest in adopting the streamlined protocols, including government contractors handling defense-related biological research. One name at the bottom of the page caught my attention: Harlow Biosciences, the largest private research conglomerate in the country, headed by Warren Harlow. Warren Harlow, who also chaired our institute's board of directors. Warren Harlow, who had personally recruited Ambrose as institute director 2 years ago. Warren Harlow, who had visited me in the hospital after my diagnosis, expressing such sincere concern about my recovery. "Talia," I said slowly, "we need to look at the board of directors more closely." The investigation into Harlow revealed a disturbing pattern. His conglomerate had been quietly acquiring smaller research facilities for years, implementing cost-saving measures that often compromised safety. 3 separate incidents had occurred at Harlow-owned labs in the past 5 years, all quietly settled out of court. records sealed. But he needed more. To truly maximize profits, he needed to change the regulations themselves. And to do that, he needed credibility from a respected institution, our institute. He needed your protocols, Talia concluded as we pieced it together. Your work is considered the gold standard. If he could revise your methods and present them as equally effective but more efficient, he could push for regulatory change. And when I refused to compromise on safety standards last year, they waited for an opportunity to sideline you. Talia's expression darkened. Your cancer diagnosis wasn't just convenient, it was perfect timing. A chill ran through me. You think they knew before I did? Your annual medical exams are part of your employment records. Vega admitted they review those closely for high-level staff. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined. While I was fighting for my life, they were methodically dismantling my life's work. But we faced a significant challenge, proving Harlow's direct involvement. As board chair, he maintained plausible deniability, with Ambrose and others serving as buffers between him and the daily operations. We need more, I admitted, frustration mounting. The evidence connects everything to Ambrose, not Harlow. Talia nodded grimly. Harlow's too careful. He's built his empire on using others as shields. That night, lying awake in my apartment, an idea took root. Harlow had one vulnerability: his reputation as a visionary in biological research. His personal brand was built on being perceived as an innovator pushing boundaries while maintaining uncompromising standards. What if we used that against him? The next morning, I presented my plan to Talia. It was risky, potentially career-ending if it failed, but it might be our only chance to expose the true mastermind. You want to offer yourself as bait, Talia said when I finished explaining. I want to give Harlow exactly what he wants, me discredited and my protocols undermined, but on my terms. After hours of discussion, she reluctantly agreed. We would proceed with extreme caution, building in safeguards to protect me if things went sideways. First, we carefully crafted a narrative. Federal investigators had found inconsistencies in my original research, minor but concerning errors that called into question the necessity of certain safety measures I'd established. Under scrutiny, I was reevaluating my previous stance on containment protocols. We leaked this information through carefully chosen channels, knowing it would reach Harlow quickly. Then we waited. 3 days later, I received a text message from an unknown number. Breakfast tomorrow? The Grove, 8 a.m. WH. Phase 1 complete. The Grove was an exclusive restaurant catering to the city's elite. I arrived at 7:45, wearing a wireless microphone developed by Talia's technical team, undetectable by standard security scans. Federal agents positioned themselves throughout the restaurant as staff and patrons. Warren Harlow arrived precisely at 8, impeccably dressed and radiating confident authority. At 62, he maintained the vitality of a much younger man, a walking advertisement for the anti-aging research his companies conducted. Mirren, he greeted me warmly, taking my hands in his. You look well. I've been so concerned. Thank you for checking on me in the hospital, I replied, the words bitter on my tongue. That meant a lot. Of course. We're family at the Institute. He gestured for me to sit. I was disturbed to hear about the recent unpleasantness. Ambrose's behavior was inexcusable. I played my part, appearing vulnerable and uncertain. Everything's happened so quickly. The federal investigation, the questions about my protocols. Harlow leaned forward, voice lowering conspiratorially. Between us, I've had concerns about the sustainability of your containment standards for some time. Really? I kept my expression neutral. Brilliant work, obviously, he assured me. Revolutionary, but perhaps overly cautious in today's research environment. The standards were developed in response to the Meridian disaster, I reminded him. 3 people died. A tragedy, he agreed solemnly, but one that occurred under outdated systems. Your improvements prevent similar failures. Certainly, but some elements may be redundant, costly without adding substantial protection. He was testing the waters, seeing if I was truly wavering. I gave him what he wanted: uncertainty. The investigation has raised questions I hadn't considered, I admitted, looking down at my coffee. Some of my insistence on triple barriers might have been emotional response rather than scientific necessity. Harlow's eyes gleamed. Perfectly understandable given the circumstances under which you developed the protocols. Trauma can lead to overcompensation. Over the next hour, he skillfully maneuvered the conversation, positioning himself as my ally against overzealous federal investigators. He suggested forming a joint committee to refine containment standards, with me as the public face, lending my credibility to the revised protocols. Think of the advancement we could unlock, he urged, painting a vision of scientific progress unburdened by excessive safety measures. Your name would be associated with both the original standards and their evolution, a complete legacy. What about Ambrose? I asked. And Elias? Harlow waved dismissively. Unfortunate casualties. They implemented changes without proper process. Our approach would be methodical, defensible. As breakfast concluded, Harlow made his offer. A position as Chief Safety Innovation Officer at Harlow Biosciences, double my previous salary, and prominent credit on all revised standards. Sleep on it, he said, signing the check. We could change the future of biological research together. I promised to consider it, and we parted ways. Him confident he'd won, me knowing we'd captured every word. But the recording alone wasn't enough. We needed him to explicitly acknowledge knowing about the illegal modifications. For Phase 2, I needed to push harder. 2 days later, I requested another meeting, this time at his office. I've reviewed your offer, I told him, sitting across from his expansive desk with its view of the city skyline. But before I accept, I need to understand exactly what happened with my protocols while I was gone. Harlow studied me carefully. How much do you know? I know Ambrose authorized changes that removed critical safety elements. I know Elias implemented them. What I don't know is who originated the concept. His expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Does it matter? We're discussing moving forward, not looking backward. It matters to me, I insisted. I need to know if this was Ambrose acting alone or part of a broader strategy. Harlow considered me for a long moment, then came to a decision. The efficiency initiative was my brainchild, he admitted, rising to pour himself a drink. 3 years in development. We identified key containment protocols that could be modified without catastrophic risk. Without catastrophic risk, I repeated, meaning some increased risk was acceptable. Calculated risk, he corrected smoothly. All research involves balancing safety against progress. Your standards, while admirable, tilted too far toward caution. So, you instructed Ambrose to implement these changes while I was undergoing cancer treatment? I kept my voice steady despite the rage burning inside me. Harlow sipped his drink. The timing was opportune. Yes, you were. Inflexible on certain points. We needed to demonstrate the viability of modified protocols without constant resistance. They stole my research. They scrubbed my name from my life's work. An unfortunate overstep, he conceded. Ambrose misunderstood my intentions. I wanted your work modified, not erased. Your name lends credibility we need. And there it was, the admission we needed, captured by the recording device hidden in my watch. He had knowingly authorized the illegal modification of established safety protocols, putting countless lives at risk for profit. But I wasn't finished. One last question, I said, reaching into my bag. Did you know about my cancer before I did? Harlow froze momentarily, then recovered. What do you mean? I removed a folder and placed it on his desk. My medical records from 6 months ago. My blood work showed early indicators that were flagged for follow-up. That follow-up was delayed by 2 months, long enough for the cancer to advance to stage 3. I've always wondered why. His face remained impassive, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. According to Vega from HR, you personally review medical reports for key personnel. You would have seen these results before I did. That's absurd, he dismissed. Why would I delay your diagnosis? Because you needed time, I said quietly. Time to position Elias, to prepare Ambrose, to set everything in motion before I became too ill to fight back. You can't prove that. I smiled then, the first genuine smile I'd managed in his presence. Actually, I can. Vega kept her own records, including your directives regarding my medical information. I stood, gathering my things. Federal agents are currently searching your home and office with warrants based on the evidence we've already collected. I imagine they'll find more. The color drained from his face as realization dawned. This entire conversation, said, has been recorded? Yes. I moved toward the door, just like our breakfast meeting. As if on cue, the door opened. Talia entered, followed by federal agents. Warren Harlow, she began formally. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, reckless endangerment, and corporate espionage. I watched as they led him away, his empire crumbling around him. The man who had seen my illness as an opportunity, who had tried to erase me and corrupt my life's work, reduced to just another white-collar criminal being processed through the system. 1 month later, I stood before a congressional committee, testifying about the systematic attempt to undermine biological safety standards. My protocols were reinstated nationwide, with additional provisions to prevent similar exploitation in the future. The legislation strengthening research safety regulations was named the Meridian Act, honoring the technicians who died in the original disaster, including Talia's brother. As for me, I accepted a position as Federal Director of Biological Safety Standards, with authority to inspect any research facility in the country without notice. When Harlow's trial concluded with a 30-year sentence, reporters asked if I felt vindicated. This was never about revenge, I told them truthfully. It was about protecting people from those who value profit over human life. But watching him being led away in handcuffs, knowing he would spend the remainder of his life in prison while my protocols saved countless others, that felt like justice. Thank you so much for staying with me through this story. If you found it compelling, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more stories of justice served. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever stood up against a powerful figure who tried to erase your contributions? Your support helps more stories like this reach others who need to hear them. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most powerful weapon against corruption is simply refusing to be erased. People like you shouldn't work here, she whispered, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she cornered me between the ice sculpture and dessert table. The company gala hummed around us, but her words created a bubble of silence. I stood frozen, champagne flute in hand, watching my boss's wife glide away with a satisfied smirk, leaving me alone with my shame and the remnants of a career I'd built from nothing. 3 years I'd spent as the financial strategist who saved the struggling investment firm. Working 60-hour weeks, I transformed toxic assets into profitable ventures while living in my modest apartment and taking the bus. Meanwhile, my boss purchased his third vacation property and his wife renovated their mansion's east wing. What she meant by people like you wasn't subtle. I grew up in government housing. My accent still carried traces of my neighborhood. My clothes, while professional, lacked designer labels. I'd earned my position through merit, not connections or inherited wealth. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't quit. That would give her exactly what she wanted. Because what Tabitha Harlow didn't know was that I had already discovered something about their precious charitable foundation, something that would change everything. And in 3 weeks, she would come to me begging for help, not knowing I was about to take everything she valued most. If you're still listening, thank you for staying with me. I notice many listeners drop off before hearing how these stories end. But I promise, what happened next changed not just my life, but everyone at Landmark Investments. Stay until the end. You won't believe where I am now. My name is Alara Neves. At 32, I was the youngest senior financial strategist at Landmark. My colleagues called me the fixer because I could transform failing portfolios into gold. What most people didn't see behind my quick smile was the girl who grew up in Eastside Gardens, sharing a 2-bedroom apartment with my grandmother and 3 siblings. I put myself through college washing dishes and cleaning offices at night. I graduated top of my class from State University, not an Ivy League school, but I earned every credit through pure grit. When Landmark hired me, I thought I'd finally crossed the invisible barrier. I believed talent and hard work were the only currencies that mattered. Preston Harlow, the CEO, seemed to value my contributions. In board meetings, he'd nod at my analyses and implement my strategies. The company's recovery over the past 3 years was largely due to my financial restructuring plan. The annual reports proved it. The numbers never lied. His wife, Tabitha, was another story. The first time we met, at a company dinner 6 months after I started, she looked at my outfit, a simple black dress I'd saved 3 paychecks to buy, and asked if I was one of the catering staff. When Preston corrected her, she'd merely raised an eyebrow and said, "How progressive of you, darling." I ignored these moments. I was used to being underestimated. Each slight just fueled my determination to prove myself through results. The night of the gala, I'd been excited. Our firm had just landed the Castleton account, a client I'd personally convinced to trust us with their 50 million portfolio. Preston had congratulated me in front of the entire team that morning. I thought, finally, I would be acknowledged not just for my work, but as someone who belonged. I wore a navy blue dress, elegant but affordable. I'd splurged on having my curly hair professionally styled. When I arrived, several colleagues complimented me. For once, I felt like I truly belonged in these marble halls. Then came the moment with Tabitha. She'd appeared beside me as I admired the elaborate ice sculpture of the company logo. "Enjoying yourself?" she asked, her voice dripping with false warmth. "Yes, thank you. The gala is beautiful." She sipped her champagne. "Preston tells me you're responsible for the Castleton account." "I worked on the pitch, yes." She glanced around to ensure no one was within earshot. "You know, I've been watching you. The way you try to fit in, with your discount store clothes and practice manners." I felt my cheeks burn but kept my expression neutral. "Preston may be impressed by your little financial tricks, but this world," she gestured around the ballroom with her champagne flute, "this isn't for everyone. People like you shouldn't work here. You don't belong, and everyone knows it." That's when she delivered those cutting words and walked away, leaving me frozen between the ice sculpture and dessert table. I wanted to run, to hide in the bathroom and let tears fall, but something hardened inside me instead. I watched her join a circle of society wives, laughing as if she hadn't just tried to destroy someone's dignity. The next morning, I woke before dawn. Instead of calling in sick or drafting a resignation letter, I pulled out my laptop and began researching. If Tabitha wanted to play the belonging game, I needed to understand what truly mattered to her. It didn't take long to find. The Harlow Foundation was Tabitha's pride and joy, a charitable organization that supposedly helped underprivileged youth. In reality, it was her ticket into elite social circles. The annual Harlow Foundation Gala was the highlight of the social season. Being on its board meant instant status among the city's elite. I dug deeper. Financial records showed the foundation was struggling. Donations were down. Expenses were rising. Their investment portfolio was poorly managed. And their annual fundraiser was just 6 weeks away. At work on Monday, I maintained my professional demeanor. I nodded politely when passing Preston in the hallway. In meetings, I presented my analyses with the same precision and insight as always. But after hours, I stayed late, not working on company projects, but developing a plan that would change everything. Octavia Penn had been my first major client at Landmark. When she came to us, she was a tech entrepreneur with a promising startup and modest savings. 3 years later, after following my investment strategy, she'd sold her company for $75 million. We'd developed a friendship beyond the professional relationship. I called her Tuesday evening. "Alara, how are you? How's life at the stuffy investment firm?" Octavia's voice was warm and genuine. "Actually, I'm calling because I've found an interesting opportunity," I said. "How would you like to make a significant social impact while also gaining entry into the city's most exclusive circles? You know I hate those pretentious gatherings. Even if it means helping to reshape how charity is done in this city?" There was a pause. "I'm listening." I explained my discovery about the Harlow Foundation, its financial troubles, its potential, and most importantly, how it could be transformed into something genuinely impactful. The foundation's bylaws allow for a takeover if someone purchases enough of their debt and convinces the board they have a better vision, I explained. With your resources and my financial strategy, we could acquire it within weeks. "And what would we do with it?" Octavia asked. "Transform it into what it claims to be, a true force for helping underprivileged youth. Real scholarships, real mentorship, real change." "This sounds personal, Alara." I hesitated. "Let's just say I recently received a reminder that some people think success should remain exclusive to those born into the right circles." Octavia was silent for a moment. "Send me the numbers. If they check out, I'm in." Over the next week, I reached out to 4 other clients who owed their financial success to my strategies. People who, like me, hadn't started with advantages. people who remembered what it was like to be excluded. By Friday, I had verbal commitments totaling 12 million, more than enough to execute my plan. I hired Dominic Reed, a brilliant attorney who specialized in nonprofit acquisitions. He'd grown up in the same neighborhood as me, but a generation earlier. He understood what I was trying to do without needing the personal details. "This foundation has serious mismanagement issues," he said after reviewing the documents I'd gathered. "The board has a fiduciary responsibility they're failing to uphold. We can use that." "How quickly can we move?" I asked. 3 weeks. Maybe 4. We need to approach current board members individually before making a formal offer. "Make it 3, I said. "Their annual fundraiser is in 6 weeks. We need to be in control well before that." At work, I continued performing excellently. Preston even called me into his office to discuss a promotion. "You've been exceptional, Alara. The Castleton account alone justified a bonus, but your overall performance has been outstanding. I'm considering making you Director of Strategic Investments." "Thank you, sir. I appreciate the recognition." He leaned back in his chair. "Tabitha and I are having a small dinner party next weekend. Key investors, board members. You should come." I forced a smile. I'd be honored. "Good. It's important for someone in a director position to develop the right social connections." I nodded, thinking of the papers Dominic was preparing at that very moment. The dinner party was at the Harlow's mansion, a sprawling estate with manicured gardens and a view of the city skyline. I arrived in a simple but elegant dress, determined to maintain my composure no matter what Tabitha might say or do. She greeted me at the door with a tight smile. "Alara, how nice of you to come." "Thank you for having me," I replied, matching her false warmth. Throughout the evening, she made subtle jabs. When I mentioned a restaurant I enjoyed, she remarked, "How quaint. Preston and I prefer establishments with proper wine selections." When another guest complimented my analysis of emerging markets, she cut in with, "Alara has such a unique perspective coming from her background." I smiled through it all, knowing what was happening behind the scenes. That very morning, Dominic had secured support from 2 board members of the Harlow Foundation who were concerned about the financial mismanagement. After dinner, Preston gave me a tour of his home office, showing off awards and photographs with celebrities and politicians. "Impressive," I said, noting a picture of him and Tabitha with the mayor at a foundation event. "The foundation gala?" he said proudly. "Tabitha's pride and joy. She's been running it for 8 years now. I've heard it's the social event of the season." Indeed, though between us there are some financial challenges this year. "Nothing serious," he added quickly. "Just cash flow issues." I nodded sympathetically. Managing nonprofits can be complex. "Tabitha handles most of it. She has her heart in the right place, but numbers aren't her strength." He chuckled. "Maybe I should have you look at their books sometime." "I'd be happy to help," I said, the irony almost making me laugh. By the 3rd week of my plan, everything was in place. Dominic had secured commitments from 5 of the 9 board members. My investors had pooled their resources. The paperwork was ready. Then, just as Dominic predicted, Tabitha called me at work. "Alara," she said, her voice strained with forced politeness. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Not at all, Mrs. Harlow. How can I help you?" "Please call me Tabitha." She paused. "The foundation's fundraiser is in 3 weeks. We're facing some challenges. Preston mentioned you're good with numbers. Perhaps you could look at our books? We'd compensate you, of course." I savored the moment, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable. "I'd be happy to meet and discuss how I might help," I finally said. "Wonderful. Tomorrow at Café Laurent? Say noon? I'll be there." I hung up and immediately called Dominic. "Move up the timeline, execute everything today." "Are you sure? We plan to—" "I'm meeting Tabitha tomorrow. I want the papers signed before then." That night, I barely slept. Years of being underestimated, of fighting twice as hard for half the recognition, of smiling through thinly veiled insults. It was all coming to a head. I arrived at Café Laurent 15 minutes early, choosing a table in the center of the restaurant. I wanted witnesses, I ordered a sparkling water and waited. Tabitha arrived 10 minutes late, designer sunglasses perched on her head, worry lines creasing her forehead. She sat across from me, placing an expensive planner on the table. "Thank you for coming," she said, signaling for a waiter. "I'll have a glass of the Bordeaux." When the waiter left, she turned to me with a practiced smile. "Preston speaks so highly of your financial acumen. The foundation is having some liquidity issues. Nothing serious, but the gala is our major fundraiser, and we need everything perfect. We desperately need someone to restructure our finances before then. Would you help us?" I took a sip of my water, letting the moment stretch. The waiter returned with her wine. She thanked him and took a sip, watching me expectantly. I smiled gently. "Actually, I just bought the entire foundation yesterday." Her wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the floor. The cafe went quiet. "That's impossible," she whispered. "The board voted unanimously this morning. I've already approved a complete leadership change." Her face paled as understanding dawned. Her social status, her charity galas, her position on every prestigious committee, all now under my control. "You need not worry about people like me working there anymore," I said, placing money on the table for her broken glass. "I'll be too busy running the organization. The foundation will announce its new direction tomorrow, focusing on educational scholarships for underprivileged youth from neighborhoods just like mine." Tabitha's mouth opened and closed, no words emerging. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. "You can't do this," she finally managed. "Preston won't allow it." "Preston doesn't have a say. The board voted based on financial mismanagement. Did you know the foundation was missing nearly $300,000 in documented expenditures? Money meant for scholarships that somehow funded private jet trips and spa weekends?" Her eyes widened. Those were necessary networking opportunities to secure donors. The IRS might disagree. Fortunately, the new management, me, has decided not to pursue an audit as long as certain conditions are met. A waiter approached with a towel, kneeling to clean the shattered glass. Tabitha didn't even acknowledge him. "What conditions?" she asked, her voice barely audible. I smiled. "We can discuss those at the foundation offices tomorrow, 10 o'clock. As I stood to leave, she grabbed my wrist. "You planned this. That night at the gala, you did this because of what I said." I gently removed her hand. "No, Tabitha. I did this because it was the right thing to do. The foundation should actually help people, not serve as your social stepping stone." I walked out of the cafe feeling lighter than I had in years. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. That evening, my phone exploded with calls and messages. Preston, Tabitha, board members, social elites suddenly concerned about their foundation. I ignored them all except for one call from Preston. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "My wife is devastated." "I'm fixing a financially mismanaged charitable foundation," I replied calmly. "Something you should have done years ago as chairman." "If this is about what happened at the gala—" "What happened at the gala?" I interrupted. Silence. "Tabitha told me what she said to you. It was inappropriate, and I apologize on her behalf. But this, buying the foundation out from under us, this is extreme. This isn't about your wife's comments. This is about doing what's right. The foundation has helped exactly 27 students in 8 years, despite receiving millions in donations. That changes now. Alara, be reasonable. We can work something out. The promotion we discussed, I was thinking executive vice president with a substantial equity package." "Are you trying to bribe me, Preston?" Another silence. "I'll see you at work tomorrow," I said and ended the call. The next morning, I arrived at the office to find Preston waiting for me. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, as if he'd slept poorly. "My office. Now," he said. I followed him, aware of curious glances from colleagues. Once inside, he closed the door and turned to me. "Name your price." "Excuse me?" "To sell the foundation back to us. Name your price." I sat down uninvited. "The foundation isn't for sale." "Everyone has a price, Alara." "Not for this. The foundation will finally fulfill its mission. providing educational opportunities to underprivileged youth. His face flushed. You don't understand what you're doing. The social connections, the annual gala, these things matter in our world. Your world, Preston, not mine. Is that what this is about? Some class warfare nonsense? I leaned forward. This is about accountability. The foundation claimed to help students like I once was, but instead funded your wife's social calendar. That ends now. He stared at me, then slowly sank into his chair. If you go through with this, your career here is over. I figured as much. I've already drafted my resignation letter. I placed an envelope on his desk. Effective immediately. His jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. No. For the first time in 3 years, I'm doing exactly what I should have done all along. I stood and walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Preston? Tell Tabitha I expect her at the foundation offices at 10. If she wants to avoid a public scandal about those missing funds, she'll be there. I walked out, head high, past curious colleagues and through the lobby where I'd once felt so intimidated. Outside, the morning air felt crisp and clean, full of possibility. At precisely 10 o'clock, I sat at the head of the conference table in the Harlow Foundation's main office. The walls were adorned with photos of past galas, Tabitha prominently featured in each one, surrounded by celebrities and politicians. Dominic sat beside me, legal documents spread before us. Octavia and 2 other investors joined virtually on the large screen at the end of the room. At 10:15, Tabitha arrived, followed by Preston and a gray-haired man I recognized as their attorney. You're late, I said simply. Tabitha looked like she wanted to snap back but thought better of it. She took a seat across from me, smoothing her designer dress with shaking hands. Let's get this over with, Preston said. What do you want? Dominic slid a document across the table. This outlines the terms of the transfer of control. As you can see, we've acquired 75% of the foundation's outstanding debt and secured board approval for new management. Preston's attorney examined the papers, his expression growing grim. This appears to be in order. What are your demands? Tabitha asked, her voice tight. I folded my hands on the table. First, you will both resign from the board, effective immediately. Preston started to object, but Tabitha placed a hand on his arm, silencing him. Second, you will publicly endorse the foundation's new direction at a press conference next week. Absolutely not, Preston said. Third, I continued as if he hadn't spoken. You will return the $300,000 in misappropriated funds, which will be used to establish a scholarship program for students from Eastside Gardens. This is extortion, Preston's attorney interjected. Dominic smiled. No, this is an alternative to an IRS audit and potential criminal charges for embezzlement from a non-profit organization. The room fell silent. Preston and Tabitha exchanged glances. And if we agree? Tabitha finally asked. Then we don't pursue legal action. The foundation is rebranded and redirected toward its stated mission. Your social standing takes a hit, but your freedom remains intact. Preston stood abruptly. We need to discuss this privately. I nodded. You have 5 minutes. They left with their attorney. When the door closed, Octavia's voice came through the speaker. You're enjoying this a little too much, Alara. I smiled. Perhaps. Remember our goal, transforming the foundation, not just punishing them. Understood, but accountability matters too. The door opened and they returned. Tabitha's eyes were red-rimmed but dry. Preston looked defeated. We agree to your terms, he said stiffly. Good choice, I replied. What followed was a flurry of signatures and legal proceedings. By noon, the transfer was complete. The Harlow Foundation was now under new management. As they prepared to leave, Tabitha paused at the door. You won't be able to run this place. The social connections, the donor relationships, they're built on personal ties. Without us, the money will dry up. I smiled. That's where you're wrong. The foundation's new backers have already pledged. 20 million more than you raised in the past 3 years combined. Her expression faltered. Oh, and Tabitha? The annual gala will proceed as scheduled. We've already sent out notices to all the usual attendees explaining the leadership change and new mission. I do hope you'll attend as guests. It would make the transition so much more seamless. Preston practically dragged her from the room as her composure finally broke. When they were gone, Dominic gathered the signed documents. Congratulations. You now control one of the city's most prestigious charitable foundations. We control it, I corrected. All of us. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. We restructured the foundation from the ground up. New mission statement, new programs, new staff, including several brilliant people who, like me, had been overlooked because of their backgrounds or lack of connections. The press picked up the story. Investment prodigy takes over Elite Foundation, promises real change, read one headline. Another proclaimed, Harlow Foundation scandal, society couple ousted amid financial questions. Preston resigned as CEO of Landmark Investments the following week, citing personal reasons. The board, aware of the brewing scandal, didn't fight his departure. Through it all, I maintained my focus on the foundation's new direction. We established scholarships for students from underserved communities. We created mentorship programs pairing successful professionals who had overcome similar obstacles with promising young people. 3 weeks after the takeover, the night of the annual gala arrived. We kept the venue, an elegant hotel ballroom, but transformed everything else. Instead of celebrity entertainers, student musicians performed. Instead of champagne towers and caviar, we served excellent but reasonably priced food, with the savings directed to programs. Most importantly, we invited 50 scholarship recipients and their families to attend alongside the usual society crowd. I stood at the entrance, greeting guests in a simple but elegant gown. Many of the regular attendees came, curious about the changes. Some were clearly uncomfortable seeing teenagers from poor neighborhoods mingling with socialites, but others engaged warmly, seemingly relieved by the foundation's authentic new purpose. At 8 o'clock, Tabitha and Preston arrived. The room quieted as they entered. She wore a stunning gown that probably cost more than a year's rent for most of our scholarship recipients. Her smile was fixed in place, but her eyes darted nervously around the transformed space. I approached them. Thank you for coming. Your table is near the front. Preston nodded stiffly. Tabitha's smile never wavered, though her eyes burned with resentment. Lovely event, she said through clenched teeth. So different. Change was overdue, don't you think? Before she could respond, I was called to the stage. As I stepped up to the microphone, surveying the room filled with society figures and students from neighborhoods like mine, a sense of completion washed over me. Welcome to the first annual New Horizons Foundation Gala, I began, using the organization's new name. Tonight marks not just a rebranding, but a recommitment to our core mission, creating educational opportunities for all young people, regardless of where they come from. As I spoke, I noticed Tabitha whispering to Preston, her expression growing increasingly agitated. He placed a restraining hand on her arm, which she shook off. Our first announcement tonight is the establishment of the Eastside Scholars Program, which will provide full college scholarships to 50 students annually from underserved communities. Applause filled the room, enthusiastic from some tables, polite but reserved from others. Our second announcement, I continued, is the appointment of our new board of directors, comprised of individuals who have demonstrated genuine commitment to educational equity. I introduced each new board member, accomplished professionals who had overcome significant obstacles. With each name, Tabitha's expression darkened. Finally, I came to the last part of my speech. Before I close, I want to acknowledge the Harlows, who led this foundation for 8 years. All eyes turned to their table. Preston managed a tight nod. Tabitha stared straight ahead, unmoving. Their presence tonight demonstrates their support for our new direction, and for that, we thank them. It was the perfect public humiliation, subtle, respectful on the surface, but devastating in its implications. Everything they had used to elevate their social status was now being used to elevate those they had looked down upon. After my speech, I mingled with guests, particularly spending time with the scholarship recipients. Their excitement and gratitude reinforced that every step of this journey had been worthwhile. Later in the evening, I found myself momentarily alone near the dessert table. Ironically, the same position where Tabitha had cornered me months ago. I felt a presence beside me and turned to find her standing there, champagne in hand. "Congratulations," she said, her voice low. "You've destroyed everything we built." "No," I replied quietly. "I've rebuilt what you neglected. There's a difference." "Don't pretend this isn't personal." I selected a small pastry from the display. "The foundation's transformation isn't personal. It's necessary." "And choosing Eastside Gardens for your first scholarship program? The very neighborhood you're from? That's not personal?" I met her gaze directly. "That was personal. I wanted students from where I grew up to know that people like them absolutely should be here, in these rooms, making these decisions." She laughed bitterly. "You think you've won? This isn't about winning or losing, Tabitha. It's about doing what's right." "So righteous," she sneered. "You know nothing about our world." "I know enough to change it." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Preston is finished in this city because of you. Our invitations have dried up. Our friends are distancing themselves." For the first time, I felt a twinge of sympathy for her. Her entire identity had been wrapped up in social status and appearances. "Build something real," I suggested. "Something that actually helps people." "People like you?" she asked bitterly. "People like all of us." I gestured around the room. "We're not so different, Tabitha. We all want to matter, to contribute, to belong." She stared at me for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression. Not acceptance. Exactly. But perhaps the first crack in her armor of superiority. Without another word, she walked away, rejoining Preston at their increasingly isolated table. As the evening wound down, I stepped onto the hotel's balcony for a moment of quiet reflection. The city lights sparkled below, and I thought about the journey that had brought me here. Octavia joined me, handing me a glass of water. "Quite a night." "Indeed." "So," she said, leaning against the railing, "was it worth it?" I considered the question carefully. Seeing those students tonight, knowing what this foundation will do for them, absolutely. And the revenge aspect? I smiled. That was satisfying too, I won't deny it, but it's not the part that will keep me going. What will? I turned to look back through the glass doors, where scholarship recipients were still chatting excitedly with mentors and donors. Changing what belonging means in rooms like this. Octavia nodded. "So what's next for Alara Neves?" "I'm starting my own investment firm, focusing on clients who want both financial returns and social impact." "Need a primary investor?" I laughed. "Are you offering?" "Consider it done." She raised her glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I echoed. The following Monday, as I worked in my new office setting up my firm, my assistant notified me of a visitor. "She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent," he said. I looked up to see Tabitha standing in my doorway. Gone was the designer outfit, replaced by a simple but elegant business suit. Her hair was pulled back, her face devoid of its usual perfect makeup. "5 minutes," she said. "That's all I ask." Curious, I nodded to my assistant, who closed the door behind him. Tabitha remained standing. "I've spent the past week thinking about what you said at the gala." "And?" "You destroyed everything I thought mattered." Her voice was steady, her gaze direct. "But watching you with those students, I realized I've never built anything real." I waited, sensing there was more. "I want to work for the foundation," she said finally. "Not as a director or even a manager. Entry level. I want to learn how to actually help people." I couldn't hide my surprise. "Why would you want that?" "Because you were right. About everything." She took a deep breath. "I need to build something real." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception or hidden agenda. I found none. "The foundation has a community outreach coordinator position open," I said finally. "It requires evening and weekend work with families from underserved neighborhoods. The pay is modest." "I'll take it." "You'll report to the program director, Zoe. She grew up in public housing and put herself through college. She won't tolerate any attitude or entitlement. I understand. I considered her for a long moment. Why should I believe this isn't some elaborate scheme to undermine what we're building? Tabitha met my gaze steadily. Because you've already taken everything I valued. Now I need to find something new to value. Her honesty was surprising. Perhaps losing everything had forced a genuine reckoning. I'll call Zoe, I said finally. If she agrees to interview you, you'll get a fair chance. Nothing more, nothing less. Relief flooded her face. Thank you. As she turned to leave, I added, Tabitha, people will talk. They'll say you've fallen far. She paused at the door. Let them talk. For the first time in my life, I don't care what people say. After she left, I sat thinking about the strange turns life takes. I hadn't just changed the foundation or my own circumstances. I might have changed Tabitha too. Whether her transformation was genuine or temporary remained to be seen. But I had accomplished something more meaningful than mere revenge. I had created the opportunity for real change, for the students we would help, for the communities we would serve, and perhaps even for someone who had once believed people like me didn't belong. The ultimate revenge wasn't taking away what Tabitha valued. It was creating something so meaningful that even she could see its worth. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, thank you. Your support means everything. Like those students at the gala, sometimes we all need someone to believe we belong in spaces others try to keep us from. If my story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of transformation. And remember, the most powerful response to those who say you don't belong is to create spaces where everyone does. You're easily replaceable, Devin said, leaning back in his chair with that infuriating half-smile. The fluorescent lights of the small conference room highlighted the sheen of his gelled hair. Quality specialists like you are waiting in line outside. I could snap my fingers and have 3 candidates by tomorrow morning. The words stabbed through me like broken glass. 7 years at Midwest Manufacturing. 7 years of solving problems no one else could see. 7 years of watching products ship safely because of my eyes, my mind, my care. Your performance metrics are adequate, he continued, sliding a paper across the table. Hence the standard 1% adjustment in compensation. 1%. After I'd personally identified the micro flaw in the R7 model that would have caused catastrophic failures in hospitals nationwide. After my inspection, protocol improvements had saved the company millions in potential recalls just last quarter. Something to say, Willa? Devin asked, noticing my white knuckles gripping the edge of the table. I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope I'd prepared just in case. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. My grandmother's motto. Find someone else then, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I placed my resignation letter before him. As per company policy, I'm giving 2 weeks' notice. Devin barely glanced at it. 2 weeks won't be necessary. We can process your departure today. There's an attachment, I said, nodding toward the second paper beneath my resignation. A transition guide. He didn't even look. We'll manage. Clear your desk by 5. 3 hours later, I walked out the main entrance. A small box of belongings in my arms. Security watched as I loaded them into my car, as if I might suddenly decide to steal industrial secrets after 7 loyal years. The attachment remained unread on Devin's desk. By the time anyone would think to look at it, I'd be long gone. What they didn't know was what I'd set in motion. What they couldn't possibly understand was exactly how irreplaceable I truly was. And in exactly 13 days, they were going to learn the hard way. If you're enjoying this story so far, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this plays out. Leave a comment with what you think happens next. I bet you won't see the real ending coming. My name is Willa Bryce, and until 3 hours ago, I was the Senior Quality Control Specialist at Midwest Manufacturing. Not the most glamorous title, but it was mine. I earned it. Growing up as the only child of a watchmaker in a small town had its advantages. Dad taught me to see the world differently, to notice the tiniest details others missed. While other kids played video games, I learned to disassemble and reassemble pocket watches blindfolded. When something broke in our house, I was the one who fixed it, analyzing the failure points and improving the design when I put it back together. People called me peculiar. Teachers said I was too precise and needed to loosen up. But precision was my comfort zone, my superpower. When everyone else saw a functioning machine, I saw the loose screw that would cause it to fail in exactly 17 days. I never planned to work at Midwest Manufacturing. With my engineering degree fresh in hand, I had interviews lined up with prestigious firms in Chicago and New York. Then Mom got sick. Cancer. The kind that didn't leave much time for goodbyes. So I stayed, taking the only technical job available within driving distance of the hospital. Assembly line worker. Entry level. Temporary, I told myself. On my third day, I noticed something wrong with the medical pump components coming down the line. A microscopic misalignment in the injection mold that would cause the pumps to deliver incorrect medication dosages over time. Not immediately, which made it more dangerous. The failure would occur after months of normal operation, when everyone trusted the equipment implicitly. I reported it to my supervisor, Tara. She ignored me. New girl making waves. I tried the floor manager, who told me to stay in my lane. Finally, I wrote a detailed analysis and slipped it under the plant manager's door. The next day, production halted. Emergency meetings filled the calendar. Teams of engineers huddled around testing equipment, verifying what I'd found. A week later, I was moved to quality control. A month after that, I became a specialist. Within a year, I had developed a multi-phase inspection system that caught problems no standard test could identify. My protocols became the backbone of the company's quality assurance program. For 6 years, things were good. I saved the company from 3 potential recalls. I prevented countless failures before products ever left the building. The old management team valued my work. They didn't always understand it, but they respected it. Then Apex Capital bought the company. New executives, new priorities, new buzzwords like streamlining and overhead reduction, and a new HR director named Devin Powell, with his MBA and his spreadsheets, and his complete inability to understand what actually happened on the production floor. From his first week, Devin had targeted my department. Quality costs, he'd announced in his first company-wide meeting. We need to balance thoroughness with efficiency. Translation: cut corners wherever possible. I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at the red brick building that had been my second home for 7 years. My phone buzzed with a text from Tara, now a production supervisor. "They're crazy to let you go. Need anything?" I didn't answer. What could I say? That I felt hollow? That despite knowing this day might come, I wasn't prepared for how much it would hurt? I started the engine and drove. No destination in mind. The spring afternoon was deceptively cheerful. All budding trees and birdsong. I ended up at Lakeside Park, where I sometimes ate lunch on good weather days. Sitting on a bench overlooking the water, I finally let myself feel everything. The anger, the betrayal, the strange relief. 7 years of my life, dismissed in 3 minutes. My expertise, my dedication, my literal blood. That time I sliced my hand fixing a jammed conveyor. All easily replaceable. My phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. Same number. Then again. Finally, I answered. "Willa?" "It's Chen from engineering." His voice was tight, stressed. "There's something wrong with the new shipment tests. The protocols are giving inconsistent results." I almost laughed. "I don't work there anymore, Chen." "What? Since when?" "Since about 2 hours ago." Devin decided I'm easily replaceable. Silence on the line. "But the Northside Hospital order ships tomorrow. We need your sign-off." "Not my problem anymore." "Call Devin." I hung up, a strange lightness filling my chest. Not my problem. For the first time in 7 years, whatever crisis erupted at Midwest Manufacturing would be someone else's responsibility. My phone immediately buzzed with texts. "Chen. Please call me back. This is serious." "Tara, the QC team is panicking. What did you do?" Lynn from production. Did you change the testing parameters before leaving? I turned off my phone and watched the lake ripple in the breeze. They would figure it out, or they wouldn't. Either way, I was free. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and did something I hadn't done in years. Absolutely nothing. No reports to review, no procedures to update, no midnight calls about production line emergencies. I slept for 10 hours straight. When I turned my phone back on the next morning, I had 27 missed calls and 43 text messages, most from Midwest manufacturing employees, 3 from Devin himself. His voicemail was terse. Willa, call me immediately regarding the testing protocols. This is urgent. The satisfaction I felt was probably petty. Okay, definitely petty. But after being told I was dispensable, hearing the panic in his voice was vindicating. I didn't call back. Instead, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and began updating my resume. 7 years at one company looked good. The specific accomplishments I could list looked even better. Around noon, my doorbell rang. Tara stood on my porch, looking frazzled. You need to come back, she said without preamble. The entire QC department is in chaos. I don't work there anymore, I reminded her, leaning against the doorframe. Devin made that very clear. The Northside order failed final inspection. Nobody understands why. The readings make no sense. Did anyone read my transition guide? Tara blinked. Of course. The attachment Devin had ignored. I left detailed instructions for whoever replaced me. It was attached to my resignation letter. Devin never mentioned any guide. He's been running around blaming the engineering team, who are blaming the production team, who are blaming the materials suppliers. I shrugged. Sounds like a management problem. Willa, please. We've worked together for years. At least tell me what's happening with the testing equipment. I hesitated. Tara had always been decent to me, even when we disagreed. Nothing's wrong with the equipment, I said finally. The problem is that nobody else understands the inspection sequences. The system works fine if you follow the exact protocols I developed. Can you write them down or talk me through them? I did write them down. In the transition guide, Tara looked desperate. They're talking about recall contingencies, Willa. This could cost millions. For a moment, I wavered. These were medical devices. Devices that saved lives. Then I remembered Devin's smug face. You're easily replaceable. I offered 2 weeks to train my replacement, I said quietly. That offer was declined. Tara's phone buzzed. What? I asked. The backup testing also failed. They're stopping all shipments effective immediately. As she rushed back to her car, I closed my door and leaned against it, heart racing. The company that had discarded me was now facing exactly what I had prevented for 7 years, a quality crisis. I should have felt bad. Instead, I felt something stirring inside me. Something like power. My phone rang again. Devin. This time, I answered. We need you to come in, he said, his voice clipped. As a consultant. One day, standard contractor rate. I'm afraid I'm busy today, I replied, surprised at my own confidence. Tomorrow then, double the standard rate. I let the silence stretch uncomfortably long. I'll need to check my schedule, I finally said. I'll get back to you. I hung up before he could respond. 7 years of loyalty had earned me a 1% raise and a dismissive exit. 24 hours of absence had earned me a consulting offer at double rates. The realization crystallized something in my mind. A plan began to form, not just for tomorrow, but for the weeks and months ahead. They thought I was replaceable. I was about to prove just how wrong they were. And Devin Powell had no idea what was coming. That night, I dreamed of broken machines and Devin's face twisted in panic. I woke up, smiling. By morning, my phone showed 15 more missed calls. The production line had been shut down completely, an unprecedented move that cost the company tens of thousands for every idle hour. The transition guide remained unread on Devin's desk, buried under crisis management paperwork. I spent the day drafting polished versions of my resume and researching companies that might appreciate my particular skills. Around noon, my doorbell rang again. This time, it wasn't Tara. It was Alan Bennett, the company president. May I come in? he asked, standing awkwardly on my porch in his tailored suit, looking distinctly out of place in my modest neighborhood. I hesitated, then stepped aside. Alan had always been fair in our limited interactions. Before Apex Capital's takeover, he'd personally thanked me after I'd prevented the R7 model disaster. Coffee? I offered, leading him to my small kitchen table. Please. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes, and his usually immaculate silver hair slightly disheveled. As I prepared the coffee, he cleared his throat. I only learned about your departure yesterday evening. Interesting, I replied, keeping my tone neutral, since it happened 2 days ago. Devin didn't inform senior management until the production issues became impossible to hide. Alan accepted the mug I offered. Willa, I'll be direct. We need you back. As a consultant, for double the standard rate, I quoted Devin's offer. Alan winced. I'm not here to offer you a consulting position. I'm here to offer you your job back, with a significant adjustment to your compensation and title. He slid a folder across my table. Inside was an employment contract for Director of Quality Assurance, with a salary nearly triple my previous one. You'd report directly to me, Alan continued, complete authority over your department. And, he hesitated, Devin has been instructed to issue a formal apology. I sipped my coffee, letting the silence grow uncomfortable. What exactly is happening at the plant? I finally asked. Alan's professional composure cracked slightly. 3 failed inspections. Production completely halted. The North Side order, worth nearly $7 million, is in jeopardy. Nobody understands your quality verification system well enough to troubleshoot it. Did anyone read my transition guide? Alan blinked. What guide? I almost laughed. The attachment to my resignation letter. It contained detailed instructions for whoever took over my position. I've never seen any guide. Devin said you left without any knowledge transfer. Now I did laugh, a short, bitter sound. Of course he did. Is there a copy you could provide? Alan asked, leaning forward. I have one, I admitted. But I'm curious. What happens if I decline your offer? Alan set down his coffee mug with deliberate care. Conservatively, a recall of 6 months' worth of production, potential lawsuits, significant layoffs at the plant while we rebuild our quality protocols from scratch. The weight of his words hung in the air. Hundreds of people worked at that plant. People like Tara and Chen, who had always treated me with respect. People with families and mortgages and dreams. I need time to consider, I said. Alan nodded and stood. 24 hours. Please. He handed me his card with his personal cell number scrawled on the back. Call me directly with your decision. After he left, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, staring at the employment contract. The salary was impressive. The title, validating. But something felt wrong about the whole situation. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Kelsey from accounting. Just heard what happened. Before you decide anything, you should know Devin's been telling everyone you sabotaged the QC systems before leaving. Thought you should know. I felt a cold fury building inside me. Sabotage? After 7 years of protecting that company from exactly that kind of disaster? I picked up my phone and dialed Alan's number. I'll come in tomorrow, I said when he answered. Not as an employee, as a consultant. 1 day only. Standard rate. Willa. Those are my terms. I'll help resolve the current crisis. After that, we can discuss future arrangements. A pause. Agreed. The next morning, I dressed with unusual care. Charcoal slacks, crisp white blouse. The good blazer I saved for special occasions. I swept my normally practical ponytail into a sleek chignon and applied makeup with precision. If I was walking back into that building, I would do it on my terms, looking nothing like the shell-shocked woman who had carried her personal items out in a box 3 days earlier. The security guard did a double take when I arrived, hastily checking his clipboard before waving me through. In the lobby, Alan was waiting with Tara and Jin from engineering. Thank you for coming, Alan said, extending his hand. The situation has escalated overnight. Where's my transition guide? I asked, ignoring his outstretched hand. Alan glanced at Tara, who shook her head. We've searched Devon's office, she said. It's not there. Convenient, I murmured. Let's see the production floor. The atmosphere in the facility was tense. Workers stood in clusters, talking in low voices. The usual rhythmic hum of machinery was absent, creating an eerie silence in a space designed to be in constant motion. The quality control lab was worse, a scene of barely controlled chaos. Technicians huddled around testing equipment, arguing about calibration settings. Sample products were scattered across every surface. In the center of it all stood Devon, issuing contradictory instructions to increasingly frustrated staff. He froze when he saw me. Willa, he managed, his expression a mixture of relief and wariness. Thank you for... I'm not here for you. I cut him off. I'm here for them. I gestured to the anxious technicians. Everyone except Devon. Gather around, please. The team assembled, their faces showing various degrees of desperation. I recognized most of them, had trained many personally. The quality verification system is working exactly as designed, I began. The problem isn't the equipment, it's the sequence. For the next hour, I walked them through the basic principles of my inspection protocol. Not the complete system, just enough to get the critical Northside order tested and shipped. I answered questions, corrected misunderstandings, and watched as comprehension gradually replaced confusion on their faces. By noon, they had successfully run the first batch of tests. By 2, the Northside order had passed inspection and was being prepared for shipping. Devon hovered at the edges of these sessions, attempting to look involved while contributing nothing. Each time he tried to interject, I deliberately turned my back to him, focusing on the technicians who were actually doing the work. At 3 o'clock, Alan called me to his office. You've saved us from disaster, he said, genuine gratitude in his voice. The board has authorized me to make you an offer significantly above what we discussed yesterday. He named a figure that made my eyebrows rise. With full departmental authority, he added, and a seat on the executive committee. I leaned back in my chair. And Devon? Alan hesitated. He's valuable in other areas of HR, so he stays, with a formal reprimand in his file, and he'll have no authority over your department. I nodded slowly, as if considering the offer. May I use your computer for a moment? Surprised, Alan turned his monitor toward me. I typed quickly, accessing my personal cloud storage. I printed 2 copies of a document, handing one to Alan. This is my transition guide, the one I attached to my resignation letter. Alan skimmed the detailed 20-page document, his expression growing increasingly troubled. This would have prevented everything that happened this week. Yes, and you say Devon had this? It was attached to my resignation letter. He chose not to share it. Alan's face hardened. He pressed his intercom. Send Devon Powell to my office immediately. While we waited, I gathered my belongings. You're leaving? Alan asked, surprised. My consulting day is nearly over. But we haven't concluded our discussion about your return. I smiled faintly. I'll be in touch with my decision tomorrow. Devon arrived just as I was preparing to leave. He faltered slightly seeing me there, but quickly recovered, smoothing his tie with manicured fingers. You wanted to see me, Alan? Explain this. Alan pushed the transition guide across his desk. Devon glanced at it, his expression carefully neutral. I've never seen this document before. It was attached to my resignation letter, I said quietly. The one you barely looked at before telling me I could leave immediately. There was no attachment, Devon insisted, a faint sheen of sweat appearing on his forehead. I reached into my bag and withdrew a 3rd copy of the guide. This is my personal copy. Note the timestamp on the digital signature, created 3 days ago, before I resigned. Devon's face flushed. I never received this. So you're suggesting I'm lying? I asked, my voice dangerously soft. I'm saying there's been a misunderstanding. Alan had been watching this exchange with growing displeasure. A misunderstanding that nearly cost us millions, that risked our relationship with our largest client, that shut down production for 3 days. Devon swallowed hard. I followed standard separation protocols, by failing to notify senior management of a key employee's departure for over 24 hours. Alan's voice had taken on a steely quality I'd never heard before. By telling the accounting department she sabotaged our systems, Devon paled. I never. Save it, Alan snapped. We'll continue this discussion privately. He turned to me. Willa, please reconsider our offer. The company needs you. I nodded noncommittally and walked out, feeling Devon's eyes burning into my back. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for several minutes, processing what had just happened. The satisfaction I'd expected to feel was muted, complicated by seeing the genuine distress of former colleagues I respected. My phone buzzed with a text from Tara. Whatever you decide, you showed everyone who's really irreplaceable today. On the drive home, I considered my options. Alan's offer was generous. The vindication of seeing Devon squirm had been satisfying. The easiest path would be to accept the promotion, return triumphant, and lord my new authority over Devon until he eventually left. But something about that scenario felt hollow, incomplete. At a stoplight, my phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Willa Bryce? A woman's voice asked when I answered. Yes. Who's this? My name is Zoe Cantrell. I'm the Vice President of Operations at Precision Medical Devices. Your name came up in a conversation with one of our suppliers yesterday. I understand you might be between opportunities right now. I felt a flicker of interest. That's correct. I'd like to discuss a potential position with our company. Would you be available for dinner this evening? The light turned green. I pressed the accelerator, a new possibility taking shape in my mind. I'm available, I said. Where and when? By the time I arrived at Riverside Bistro to meet Zoe, I had done my research. Precision Medical was Midwest Manufacturing's largest competitor, smaller, but growing rapidly and known for innovation. Their quality standards were legendary in the industry. Zoe was already seated, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with cropped silver hair and an air of efficient competence. She stood to greet me with a firm handshake. Thank you for meeting on such short notice, she said as we settled at the table. Industry gossip travels fast, and when I heard Midwest had lost their quality specialist, I was intrigued. How did you hear about me specifically? I asked, genuinely curious. Zoe smiled. 3 of our biggest clients use both our products and Midwest's. They've mentioned for years that Midwest's quality verification was exceptional, better than the industry standard. When those same clients called yesterday in a panic because Midwest had halted shipments due to quality concerns, I started asking questions. Our conversation flowed easily. Zoe asked intelligent questions about my processes and listened intently to my answers. By dessert, she had outlined a position that seemed tailor-made for my skills, Director of Quality Systems, reporting directly to her, with a team of specialists under my direction. The salary is competitive, she said, sliding a folder across the table. I opened it and nearly choked on my coffee. The figure was 20% higher than Alan's already generous offer. This seems exceptional, I managed. We value exceptional people, Zoe replied simply, and we'd like you to bring your quality verification system to us exclusively. The implications sank in slowly. You want my inspection protocols. We want you. The protocols come with you. We're prepared to patent them in your name, with you as the primary beneficiary of any licensing agreements. My mind raced with possibilities. My inspection system, formally recognized and protected. My name on the patents. I should tell you, I said carefully, that Midwest has made me a substantial offer to return. Zoe nodded, unsurprised. Of course they have. They're desperate. But I have to ask, after they dismissed you as easily replaceable, do you really want to go back? Even with more money and a better title, you'll always be the person they only valued after they lost you. Her words hit me with unexpected force. She was right. Going back would mean living with the knowledge that my worth was only recognized after I was gone. I need time to consider, I said. Of course, but don't take too long. Zoe handed me her card. We'd like you to start next week. Zoe, that night I sat on my porch swing, weighing my options as the sunset painted the sky in dramatic oranges and purples. Returned to Midwest, where I had history, where I knew every machine and process intimately. Accept their belated recognition and increased status. Watch Devon squirm under my new authority. Or join Precision. Start fresh, build something new, own my intellectual property properly for the first time. Never again wonder if I was truly valued. My phone buzzed with a text from Alan. The board has authorized an additional 10% above our offer. Please call me in the morning with your decision. As darkness fell, a plan crystallized in my mind. Not just for tomorrow, but for the months ahead. A plan that would prove once and for all exactly how irreplaceable I truly was. And Devon Powell would never see it coming. I woke at dawn the next morning, my decision made. I called Alan first. I appreciate the offer, I told him, but I'm declining. A long pause. May I ask why? I was replaceable 3 days ago. Now I'm suddenly invaluable. That's not a foundation I want to build on. Willa. Mistakes were made. Yes, they were. Goodbye, Alan. I hung up and immediately called Zoe at Precision. I'd like to accept your offer, I said when she answered. With one condition. I'm listening. I need 30 days before I start. Zoe hesitated. May I ask why? I have a personal project to complete, and I need to document my quality verification system properly. Understandable. 30 days is acceptable. I'll have HR prepare the paperwork. My next call was to a business attorney who specialized in intellectual property. I explained my situation and scheduled a consultation for that afternoon. By noon, I had cleared my small home office and covered one wall with a large whiteboard. For the first time in 7 years, I began documenting my complete quality verification system. Not the simplified version I had shown the technicians yesterday, but the full, complex methodology I had developed through years of observation and refinement. Every sequence, every calibration setting, every checkpoint and failsafe, all the knowledge I had kept primarily in my head, sharing only the operational basics with the QC team at Midwest. The attorney, Melinda, arrived promptly at 2. I explained my situation while she took careful notes. So, you developed this quality verification system while employed at Midwest Manufacturing, she clarified. Yes, but it wasn't part of my job description. I was hired as a line worker and later promoted to quality control. Creating a new inspection methodology wasn't in my contracted duties. Melinda considered this. That creates an interesting gray area. Did you ever sign an intellectual property agreement? I shook my head. My original employment contract was basic. When I was promoted, the title and compensation changed, but nothing else. And your system isn't documented in company materials? Only partially. Basic operational guidelines, not the underlying methodology. She made a final note. We have grounds to file for patent protection in your name. There will likely be a challenge from Midwest, but their position is weakened by their failure to properly document and secure your work while you were employed there. For the next week, I worked with Melinda to file preliminary patent applications for my quality verification system. We carved it into distinct processes, each potentially patentable on its own. By Friday, the first filings were complete. Meanwhile, I fielded daily calls from Alan, each more desperate than the last. I let most go to voicemail, but answered one on day 6. The production line is still down, he said without preamble. We've brought in 3 consultants. None can fully replicate your process. That's unfortunate, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Name your price, Willa. Whatever it takes. It's not about the money, Alan. Then what is it about? I considered how to answer. Respect. Recognition. Understanding that some people aren't as replaceable as they might seem. He seized on this. We recognize that now. The board is prepared to offer you a vice presidency. Too late, I said simply, and hung up. On day 9, Tara texted me. Devon's been demoted. Now working in the records department in the basement. I smiled at that, but didn't reply. On day 12, my doorbell rang. A courier delivered an envelope containing formal job offers from 3 of Midwest's competitors, all clearly having heard about my availability. I filed them away without responding. On day 15, I drove to the small cafe across from Midwest Manufacturing during lunch hour. I sat by the window, watching employees file out for their breaks. Their faces showed the strain of the ongoing crisis, the tightness around eyes, the quick, nervous movements. I recognized that look. It was the expression of people worried about their futures, their jobs. Guilt nagged at me. My quarrel wasn't with the line workers or engineers. They weren't responsible for Devon's actions or the company's failure to value my contribution until it was too late. Tara spotted me through the window and came inside, sliding into the seat across from me. "You look well," she said, studying my face. "Better than the rest of us. How bad is it?" I asked. She sighed heavily. "Production's partially restarted, but quality rejections are through the roof. We're shipping at maybe 30% capacity. The board is meeting daily. Rumors about layoffs are everywhere." My stomach tightened. "I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you?" Her tone wasn't accusatory, just tired. "You could fix this, Willa. You could save hundreds of jobs. That's not my responsibility anymore." "Maybe not. But these people have families, mortgages. They didn't do anything wrong." She left before I could respond, leaving me with an uncomfortable weight in my chest. That evening, I stared at my whiteboard, at the detailed documentation of my life's work. Was I punishing the wrong people? Was my revenge against Devon and the company that undervalued me hurting innocent bystanders? I called Zoe. "I have a hypothetical question," I said when she answered. "If I were to license my quality verification system to other companies while working for Precision, would that be acceptable?" A thoughtful pause. "Ordinarily, no, but in your case, it might be arranged. Under certain conditions." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about the human cost of what's happening at Midwest." "Ah." She understood immediately. "You're concerned about the workers." Yes, a limited licensing arrangement might be possible. But Willa, don't give away what you've earned. Whatever you decide, make sure it's on your terms." Her words stayed with me as I formulated the next phase of my plan. On day 17, I called Alan and requested a meeting. Not at Midwest, but at a neutral location, a conference room at the downtown library. He agreed immediately. When we met the following morning, I brought Melinda with me. Alan arrived with Midwest's corporate counsel, a nervous-looking man named Grant. "Thank you for meeting," Alan began, looking haggard. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his normally impeccable suit appeared slept in. "We're prepared to discuss any terms." I held up my hand. "I'm not here to negotiate employment. I've accepted a position with Precision Medical Devices." Alan's face fell. Grant shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "However," I continued, "I'm prepared to offer Midwest Manufacturing a licensing agreement for my quality verification system." I slid copies of my patent applications across the table. Grant picked one up, skimming it with growing alarm. "You've filed for patents?" he asked, his voice strained. "Yes. My attorney can explain the legal basis for my ownership claim." Melinda outlined our position calmly and methodically. As she spoke, Grant's expression shifted from disbelief to resignation. "The licensing terms are non-negotiable," I said when she finished. 20% of the system's demonstrated annual value to Midwest, calculated as the difference between your current rejection rates and the rates achieved under my system. Initial term of 5 years, renewable at my discretion." Alan looked stunned. "That could be millions." "Yes, it could. The board will never agree." I gathered my papers. "Then I wish you luck finding another solution." "Wait," Alan said quickly. "What about the workers? The people who depend on those jobs?" I met his gaze steadily. "That's why I'm offering a license at all, instead of simply walking away. But I won't undervalue my work again. 20% is fair. It's your choice." As we left the meeting, Melinda smiled. "That was impressively done. They'll accept." "How can you be sure?" "Because they have no choice, and they know it." 3 days later, Grant called Melinda. The board had approved my terms. The licensing agreement would be ready for signature within the week. On day 25, I received a text from an unknown number. This is Kelsey from accounting again. Thought you'd want to know. Devin's been assigned to administer your licensing payments. He's furious but can't refuse the assignment. I laughed out loud at the perfect poetry of it. The man who had deemed me easily replaceable would now spend his days calculating and processing payments that recognized my irreplaceable value. On day 29, I drove to Midwest Manufacturing one last time, not as an employee or consultant, but as a business partner. The security guard smiled uncertainly as he issued me a visitor badge. In the conference room, Alan, Grant, and several board members waited with the final licensing documents. Conspicuously absent was Devin. The signing took less than 20 minutes. As we concluded, I asked casually, "Will Devin be managing the licensing relationship?" Alan looked uncomfortable. "Yes. He's been reassigned to vendor management." "Perfect," I said, smiling. "I look forward to our quarterly reviews." As I walked through the production floor toward the exit, I saw the line workers watching me curiously. Production had resumed at partial capacity, with the first implementation of my license system underway. Near the quality control lab, I spotted Tara supervising a testing sequence. She approached me, arms folded. "So, you found a way to help without coming back." It seemed like the best solution for everyone. She studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. "The company underestimated you in every possible way, didn't they?" "They did." "Will you be back to oversee the implementation?" "No, the documentation is comprehensive, and I start my new job on Monday." Tara extended her hand. "Good luck, Willa, and thank you for not burning it all down." "You could have." I shook her hand, surprised by the sudden tightness in my throat. "Take care of them," I said, nodding toward the workers on the line. "I will." As I walked to the main exit, a familiar figure emerged from a side corridor. Devin, carrying a stack of folders, his formerly pristine appearance now rumpled and harried. He froze when he saw me. For a moment, we just looked at each other. I saw the recognition in his eyes, the dawning understanding of exactly how thoroughly he had misjudged me. "Hello, Devin," I said pleasantly. "I understand we'll be working together on the licensing agreement." He swallowed hard. "Yes, that's correct. I look forward to our first quarterly review. I'll need detailed reports on implementation progress, quality metrics, and of course, accurate calculations of the licensing fees." "Of course," he muttered. "You'll find all the instructions in the documentation. I'm sure someone as capable as you won't have any trouble following them." His face flushed at the deliberate echo of his dismissive attitude toward me. "One more thing," I added, unable to resist the final twist of the knife. "Do you remember what you said to me during my last performance review?" He looked away. "I said many things. You said I was easily replaceable. That quality specialists like me were waiting in line outside." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "How's the search for my replacement going, Devin?" He had no answer. "For the next 5 years, minimum, you'll be processing payments to me that will likely exceed your annual salary. Each quarter, you'll document exactly how essential my work is to this company's survival. And every time you sign one of those reports, I want you to remember what you said to me in that conference room." I stepped back, smiling pleasantly. "Have a nice day." As I walked out into the sunshine, a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying lifted from my shoulders. My revenge wasn't about destroying Midwest or even ruining Devin's career. It was about establishing my true value, on my terms. On Monday morning, I started at Precision, bringing my expertise to a company that recognized its worth from the beginning. Within 6 months, I had built a team that implemented enhanced versions of my quality systems, pushing Precision's standards even higher. Meanwhile, Midwest struggled to rebuild. Their products shipped again, but at reduced capacity and higher costs, 20% of which came to me quarterly in checks signed by Devin Powell. By year's end, Precision had captured 15% of Midwest's market share. Analysts pointed to our superior quality controls as the differentiating factor. My patents were approved, cementing my professional reputation and financial security. At the industry's annual conference, I ran into Alan. He looked aged beyond the single year that had passed. You could have destroyed us, he said quietly during a break between sessions. That was never my goal. What was your goal then? I considered the question carefully. To be valued appropriately. To never again be considered easily replaceable. He nodded slowly. Mission accomplished, I'd say. Devin submits his quarterly reports on your licensing agreement with remarkable thoroughness. I think it's the only part of his job he actually fears getting wrong. I smiled at that. The perfect punishment for the man who had dismissed my precision and attention to detail. Being forced to apply those same qualities to calculating my value, quarter after quarter, year after year. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's forcing them to acknowledge your worth, over and over again, while you move forward into something better. As for me, I'm no longer worried about being replaceable. I've built something that speaks for itself, a legacy of quality that bears my name and my patents. My systems protect patients in hospitals across the country. My team at Precision treats me with the respect I've earned. And every 3 months, I receive a reminder of how wrong Devin was, in the form of a check that grows larger each quarter, as the licensing terms capture the true value of what I created. That's the thing about being irreplaceable. Once you truly understand your worth, no one can ever take it away from you again. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear about a time when someone underestimated your value and how you proved them wrong. Hit the like button if you've ever wanted to show someone exactly how irreplaceable you really are, and subscribe for more stories about getting the recognition you deserve. Remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't just walking away. It's succeeding so spectacularly that they never forget what they lost.